Good evening, all, and welcome to the zoo. The minion with me this evening is Adam,
Hello.
and as it is once again a Friday, I am, of course, the keeper for this evening, Sanguine. We might be joined by an Inquisitor later on, but that might not ever come to fruition. It depends on how everything's going on his end. But how are you doing this evening, Adam?
I'm doing all right. I'm glad it's Friday.
Well, that's good to hear. And
How are
on
you doing?
I'm passing fair on this particular evening. I'm about to crack into a new bottle of scotch that I got,
Ew. Kind of
which
scotch.
is a specialty production of Ardbeg, which is an Islay scotch. I ended up getting a bottle of their heavy vapors, which Isleys are very heavily peated scotches, so they're very smoky and delicious. I rather love Isleys. Some people, they're too smoky, so they don't like them. If you like smoke, I recommend giving Isleys a go. And the Heavy Vapors is a limited time release where they did most of their brewing exactly the same. They just decoupled one of their purifiers.
Ew.
So, by decoupling one of their purifiers, they were able to get some interesting notes in the whiskey. Because all scotches are whiskeys, not all whiskeys are scotches. But they got some interesting notes that are normally purified out into this one. And then they did some work with it in order to get only the most appealing of the flavors. One moment.
um.
I hate when you feel like you need to sneeze and then it just doesn't fucking come. I muted the mic because it felt like I was about to sneeze and then it just completely. It was the sneeze version of edging.
Are those tricksy kind of sneezes?
Yeah, where you feel the sneeze, you know you're going to sneeze, it's making your face do that interesting scrunch right before a sneeze, where it's that type scrunch. And then you get right up to the point where you feel it's going to go, and then it just immediately fades. It is the edging of sneezes. It gets you right up to the point, and then no, you're denied. I fucking hate those types of sneezes.
Dude, seasonal allergies are no joke.
Oh, yeah. I've been getting fucked over by them since about Sunday. I ended up getting a bit of a jump start on the allergies on Sunday because I completely forgot that one of my aunts and uncles have a specific type of cat that I'm rather allergic to. So I ended up stopping by their place, not thinking about it. That had me sniffling and sneezing throughout the rest of the day. And then seasonal allergies are kicking in because it's in that warm and chill where tree mold really starts being an issue. And I have tree mold allergies, so that's starting to fuck with me.
Damn. So it's it's pretty much a double whammy for you.
Yep, got hit
Getting
by
on
cat
your
allergy and then tree mold allergy.
tree mold.
But I thankfully found out which allergy med seems to be doing the trick this year. Oh my god, this is a lovely little whiskey. Ooh, that is shockingly pale for an Ardbeg. But I had a horrendous week with the allergies due to that, and it took some time in order to get the right med and figure out which one it is. I have this nasty rotation where I'll be on a med for a year or two, and it'll work wonders, and then it'll just completely fucking stop, and I need to find out which allergy med is now the one that I need to take. So I'll rotate through like 4 different allergy meds before being able to go back to the start. So I apologize if you hear like just that, where I have to blow my nose. I'll try to mute up in time, but no promises that I will every time.
Yo, dude. It's been plenty of times where I just let flow the fungus from my nose, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Even if we're on stream, sometimes just gotta, you know.
Ooh, this is a strange scotch, and it is delicious.
Hold on, I think we might have a home style remedy.
The touching your tongue to the roof of your mouth.
Yeah.
I've heard that before. Doesn't work the best. I've also heard that as the cure for brain freeze, and that works far better.
Wait,
Either
what's the cure for brain freeze?
brain freeze, either sticking your tongue to the roof of your mouth, or if your tongue's too cold, sticking your thumb to the roof of your mouth. Because brain freeze isn't actually up in your head, it's the hard palate in the top of your mouth got too cold too quickly. So you stick your thumb up there, or your tongue, anything that's warmer, and it warms those nerves and capillaries back up, which then gets rid of that pain. And it gets rid of it much faster. So the Ardbeg Heavy Vapors, oh good God, it is delicious. It is a strange one, but it is delicious. It's real. So when I take a sip of it, ooh, and it has a nice finish to it as well. That kind of lingering taste at the very end. So just to give a bit of a live whiskey taste, as I do this, let me take another.
There you go.
So when I first get it on the tongue, it's chocolatey and spicy with a nice bit of earthiness. And it works out really well. Then that ends up, the spiciness fades, and it's almost a peppery note comes in immediately after, with a little bit of licorice. I'm not the biggest fan of licorice, but then that licorice quickly fades to more cinnamon, and then both that peppermint-y and cinnamony taste fade into kind of that minty menthol at the very end, but it's a subtle minty menthol, which is rather lovely. This is a fantastic bottle of scotch. It's very strange. It's much paler than I expected it to be. And like I said, it has those interesting flavors that blend and twist as it goes. But if you like scotches, this is one that's definitely worth giving a go. And it's, of course, you get that nice smokiness from Ardbeg, because it's still an Islay.
Nice.
So, uh, anything special in your day happen, or anything that you want to talk about, or shall we launch into the brunt of the thing that I want to bullshit and blather about?
Hmm. Well, guess I want to say shout out to my beloved lady, and I still won't eat the onions. Second, I will say, um, yeah, I forgot what I was gonna say the second, because of the onions, but yeah,
Well,
let's roll, brother.
okay. So, the first thing that I want to talk about, and I'll end up sharing the screen because I've talked about this before recently. One of my interesting kicks when it comes to YouTube is watching old school films from World War II and very shortly after World War II. And there is an absolutely fantastic post World War II educational film that I saw recently. And it reminded me of the hyphenated American.
Ooh. Now, when you say these recorded videos, are you talking about the types like where it's like, hey, school children, here's what happens when you hear the nuclear bomb siren?
So some of them are that type. The ones that I've been watching the most of tend to be let's see. A really good example is there was a infantry versus tanks video that was, here's how you take out tanks as an infantryman. This is where you aim. This is what tools you'll use to take out the tank. And if you don't have these are the ways that you can fuck with tanks even if you don't have the proper armament. Have fun, kill those fucking krauts. And it's just amazing. The way that they're presented. I love the old school World War II informational videos. So I've been having a real kick of just going through those, and I'm trying to find the.
Where are you finding these? It's like, is it a channel?
So there's a bunch of channels. The one that I'm going to be sharing is from the Best Film Archive channel, but there's Periscope has a bunch of them, and there's a handful of other channels that also have them. Why am I having trouble finding this tab? It is post World War II. Sorry, this is taking so long. I have a bunch of tabs open, and I'm trying to find one in particular. And I was expecting it to be up at the top, but it seems that StreamYards has redone how they have things set up. So
Oh, great.
the screen share has changed and changed rather appreciably, which it unfortunately has not been a change for the better. At least not in this instance. Let me see if I can't trick it into popping this towards the top of the queue, because it is a video that I think V showed ages ago and talked about it a little bit. And like I said, it just reminds me of the hyphenated American, so I will also be bringing up that particular speech by Teddy Roosevelt because it is one of my favorite speeches ever given. And it is to the US's eternal shame that somehow Teddy Roosevelt did not win the argument on the hyphenated American, but it's one that I think needs to be resurrected. Why is this being such a bitch to find? Okay, let me try to see if I can't get this to pop up towards the top of the queue this way. And sadly, that did not do the trick. Why is this? Sorry, everyone. I thought that this would be much easier because it used to be that your most recently opened tab would be right at the top of the list. But now it is not right up at the top of the list, nor is the list sorted by alphabetical. It seems to be a completely random listing of videos, or of tabs, rather. So all the tabs are just blended together in a rather terrifying fashion. Let me instead try this, and I'll just do it this way. Okay. This shares more than I was really trying to share, but this will work all the same.
Well, I mean, look, it's all a
So
means to try and silence you from sharing the truth.
everyone see this full screened now? See a black window with
There
play
you go.
bar and okay, so I'm going to click go and I'll pause it at various points if I have anything to say, but this is a fantastic goddamn video. And like I said, this is right after World War II.
Don't be a sucker.
Yep.
Um, I don't know if anybody's getting audio out there.
The little catches and jumps will fade fairly quick. It's just at this very first part of the video that this happens. And it's warning you against all sorts of scams to start. And if this shit doesn't make you feel like fuck yeah, America, I have no clue what the hell will.
um, yeah, Rotten Corpse says he's not getting any audio either.
They aren't getting the audio? Let me read it. It should have done audio, so stop sharing and screen share. Share audio's clicked. Let me. Might be because I clicked into the other way of doing it that it stopped sharing audio, which fantastic. So let me. Adam, you talk while I find the correct tab so that I can get it to share audio properly.
Well, since I have the floor, on behalf of the minions of the zoo, let me tell you who is in control of the Media Corps and all of
God
the
damn
other big.
it.
um, no, yeah. I guess this is where I could do a little plug-in. So if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit the like and subscribe. But I think we're kind of migrating towards Rumble. So look us up on Rumble and join us out there. Um, I know for Monday, um, I'm eventually gonna try and get it towards simultaneous cast, and maybe eventually just host it on Rumble. I don't know. I gotta see how it works out. I haven't streamed on Rumble, but yeah.
Sorry about showing that message. Let me now do it this way. I figured out what the problem was. So this should come in with it talking. Let's
Who's
see if it
talking?
actually does that.
No, hold on. I'm talking. I still gotta fucking plug some shit.
Just
Oh,
to make
there you
sure,
go.
is the sound working?
Yeah. No, yeah, there you go.
So I'll let you continue your plug before we continue on with the reading.
Oh, right. Okay, my plug. What was my plug? Oh, yeah, right. So, okay. So, like, subscribe, YouTube and Rumble, and uh, yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Oh, wait, yeah. Join our Discords because there's some crazy antics that go on there too. So there you go. I guess that's it. That's pretty
And
much it.
yes, you need to have a certain number of subscribers to stream to Rumble, but thankfully, we've reached that subscriber count.
Oh, really?
Last I heard, Hammer's already started streaming on there.
Oh, well, I mean, if Hammer's
Hammer
streaming,
is in chat. If I'm incorrect, Hammer, please do correct me on that. But last I heard, he's started streaming on there, and a couple of others are talking about migrating over there as well.
I mean, it wouldn't be a bad thing.
Hello, Funkenstein.
I mean, lore master. I'm not a
Yes,
lore
but
master.
no,
If
you're
anything,
Adam. I'm Lore Master.
are you really?
That's what he's taken to calling me because I'm able to tell stories about so many different things.
Oh, that makes sense.
So I've become the Lore Master. But
Oh shit! Hold on. I
what am I holding on to? I just put away my bottle of scotch. Do I need to grab it back out so I can hold on to that?
Dude, yeah, I think we're gonna need to take a shot because I think I see a.
Oh, Donkey.
Oh no.
But Donkey's trying to hide his Canadianness by saying oi rather than a.
Right? You see that?
Yeah.
You caught that?
He's
I
trying to be stealth Canadian.
listen, Donkey. We're on to you, and I'm gonna take a
Yeah.
shot of whiskey. So
Nice. So let me start up the anti-fascism educational film, which is fantastic. For the bits that have already happened, it showed a guy sitting down to a game of poker with a bunch of people that he doesn't know on a train, and a guy getting honeypotted at a bar and then blackjacked in an alley. They just went through his pockets and stole what he had on him. Because the entire premise of it is don't be a sucker, and it's telling you about all the various scams that you should look out for. The rigged poker games, the honey pots, and blackjacking in alleys. And then it goes on.
There's a good old-fashioned word for people like us. We call them suckers. And there are other people who stay up nights figuring out how to take away what they've got. There are all kinds of games. Mike here, for instance. He's got everything in him. He's young, he's healthy, got a job. And he's got plenty of food. Big
Thankfully,
factories
it's
to make
don't
things a
be a
man can
sucker
use. Big cities to do the business of a big company. And people.
with an
Lots
ER,
of
not an
people.
A.
Enough to work the farm and build the factories, dig the mines, run the business. All kinds of people. People from different countries with different religions,
But like
different
I said,
colored
if this
skin.
doesn't get any American
Free people.
citizens at least a semi, I'm not sure
They can
what's
live
wrong.
together and work together and build America together because they're free. Free to vote,
Dude,
to say what
well,
they please.
it sounds
Go
like
to
they
their own
got their
churches.
cousin Vinny to do the line art. Yeah,
To do the voiceover?
and the workers, and the
Yeah.
farmers, and the line workers. And then
Yep.
everybody's going over there and they're doing their fucking job.
Yep.
Just make sure that they're doing what needs to keep going. It's like, holy shit.
It's fantastic. It is unapologetic Americana.
Hey, well,
I love it. Let's continue on.
don't be a donkey.
To pick their own jobs. Yeah, Mike's got something, all right. He's got America. But there are guys who stay up nights figuring out how to take that away from him.
I happen to know the facts. My friends, I'm just an average American. But I'm an American. And some of the things I see in this country of ours make my blood boil. I see people with foreign money. I see Negroes holding jobs that belong to me and you. Now I ask you, if we allow this thing to go on, what's going to become of us real Americans?
I've heard this kind of talk before, but I never expected to hear it in America.
This fellow seems to know what he's talking about. What are we real Americans going to do about it? You'll find it right here in this little pamphlet. The truth about Negroes and foreigners. The truth about the Catholic Church.
Do you believe in that kind of talk?
I don't know, makes pretty good sense to me. And I tell you, friends, we'll never be able to call this country our own until it's a country without. Without what? Yeah, without what? Without
Holy
Negroes.
shit, that took a turn.
Without alien foreigners.
Mm-hmm.
Without Catholics. Without Freemasons. You know these people.
What's wrong with the Masons? I'm a Mason. Hey, that fellow's talking about me.
And that makes a difference, doesn't it?
These are your enemies. These are the people who are trying to take over our country. Now you know them. You know what they stand for. And it's up to you and me to fight them. Fight them and destroy them before they destroy us. Thank you.
Before he said Masons, you were ready to agree with him.
Well, yes, but he was talking about... What about those other people?
But in this country, we have no other people. We are American people.
What about you? You aren't American, are you?
I was born in Hungary, but now
And yes,
I am an
there is a
American citizen.
distinction, Talik.
And I have seen
But
what this kind of talk can do. I saw it
There's
in
also a
Berlin.
lot of people that
What were you
use
doing there?
Mason
I was a professor
as
at the university.
shorthand for Freemason.
I heard the same words we have heard today. But I was a fool then. I thought Nazis were crazy people, stupid
Oh,
fanatics.
it's Slugworth.
But unfortunately, it was not so. You see, they knew that they were not
I
strong
want you
enough to
to
conquer a
give me
unified
one
country.
A piece
So
of the
they split
gobstopper.
Germany into small groups. They used prejudice.
Say again?
It looks like Slugworth. He's asking for a gobstopper.
As a practical weapon to cripple the nation. Of course, that was not easy to do. They had to work hard to do it. You see, we human beings are not born with prejudices. Always they are made for us. Made by
Funkenstein
someone
is
who wants
very
something.
much against
Remember that when you
stoneworkers.
hear this kind of talk. Somebody is going to get something out of it. And it isn't going to be you. This is not classroom theory. I saw it happen. I saw it first in Berlin in 1932.
Be ready
5
for these
young men that I
amazing
knew
German
were standing
accents,
in the
by the way.
crowd listening to the Nazi speaker.
Everyone ready?
Eric was a Catholic. Anton, a student of mine, was a Jew. Heinrich owned a small hardware store. Karl was a farmer. And Hans was an unemployed metal worker.
To all Bohemian Germans, I say it is time you inherited the nation which rightfully belongs to you.
Right?
To you alone belongs the glorious destiny of the greater Germany. The Nazi Party will provide land for the farmer, work for the worker, and profits for the small businessman. Who is getting these things now? The Jew. The Jew who has stolen our nation and our birthright. Who makes all the money and takes all our jobs? The Jew! He must
Holy
be
shit.
shunned.
Okay,
He
what
must
are
be
we
ostracized.
getting ourselves
He must
into?
be eliminated.
Well,
And the Catholics.
talking about what happened.
We don't want our great
Nazi
nation
Germany,
run by a
how
foreign
the same
church.
sort of speech.
We Germans will know what to do with these people when the time comes.
And how
They
it
and their faith must be destroyed. Then there are the Freemasons. In Germany, we have
yeah,
no
it
place
is
for
very
secret
much
societies.
Italian rather than
There will be only
German.
one society, and that is the Nazi Party. There will be no secrecy about that in the new Greater Germany.
One by one, he attacked each minority and he split them off one from the other. These men were all fellow Germans when they came here today. Now they were split into rival groups, suspicious of each other, hating each other. They were being swindled, all of them. But the man who was really being fooled was Hans. He was pure German, according to Nazi standards. To him they promised everything, and he fell for it.
And yes,
That's
the pool
how
parties
Hans
and
became
pizza
a
parties
Superman.
are far better
They
parties.
gave him a uniform and they pumped up his ego. He wasn't just a little fellow out of
And
work anymore.
whiskey parties.
He
are
was
the
a
best
member
parties.
of the master race. Hans and thousands of others like him, all playing a sucker's game. They gambled with other people's liberty, and of course they lost their own. A nation of suckers. Hitler needed these people. There was lots of work to be done. There were trade unions to be smashed. Because
Absolutely,
unions were
Tock.
organized
That's
and might
why I
offer
ended up
resistance.
thinking about
There were
this.
many political parties in Germany.
What I ended up thinking about
These
while
the
I was
Nazis
watching,
destroyed.
and it's made all
They
the
were
more clear at
determined
the
to smash
very end.
every organization where people might band together and resist them. There were Jews to be beaten and killed. The Jews were not powerful, but they were a convenient excuse for all the nation's ills. And besides, a Nazi party member could not take over this man's store. Hundreds of Catholics were put in jail because the Catholic Church had strength and could resist the Nazi drive for power. They had split the nation into 100 pieces, and then one by one, they had destroyed the pieces. Over these broken pieces, the Nazis rode into power. One party, one nation, one religion.
Don't ask why the Nazi posters are written in English.
These men had won their struggle for power. They now ruled all of Germany. But still they had trouble with their oldest and most persistent enemy, the truth. They found that truth does not die easily. And so they decided to abolish truth. One great source of truth is literature. So they burned books, 20 million of them. Many great men in Germany who were spokesmen for truth were jailed or driven from their country. Teachers, writers, scientists. Education was discouraged. In 5 years, college attendance dropped 53%. It was forbidden to listen to a British radio program or read an American newspaper. In Nazi Germany, you had to get your information from Dr. Goebbels. He knew what was best for you. The church was one force in Germany still strong enough to proclaim the truth in public. This Catholic priest was arrested the following day on charges of immorality. The Protestant church also continued to try and fight for truth. The Nazis put this man in a concentration camp. There were others who spoke for truth, and I am proud to say
there's a lot
that
of shit
educators
going on in
were
this
among them.
direction.
And what, may I ask, is an Aryan? I don't know myself. But let us see what our present so-called authorities have to say about it. They say he is tall,
This is just so stupid.
slender, blue-eyed, and blonde. There is no Aryan race.
It's an
And
odd
more
looking
important,
blonde.
there is no master race. There are people who may find these ideas
Oh yeah,
convenient,
like I said, as it goes,
but
it
science
just builds
cannot
up
support
more and
them.
more.
There
And
is
it's a
no
message that
scientific proof
needs to be repeated now.
that there's any correlation between a man's racial characteristics and his native ability or character. In all racial groups, we find the same range of potentialities. We find idiots and geniuses. We find criminals and philanthropists. We must judge each man as an individual and not by the color of his skin or his eyes or by the length of his nose. Come in, gentlemen. It's comfortable. And remember that there is no master race. That is a scientific truth. Anyone who tells you otherwise is lying.
And so, for all practical purposes, truth had been abolished in Germany. A lot of my German friends wondered what had hit them. How did it happen? Where did it start? It started right here. And this was where it could have been stopped. If those people had stood together, if they had protected each other, they could have resisted the Nazi threat. Together they would have been strong. But once they allowed themselves to be split apart, they were helpless. When that first minority lost out, everybody lost out. They made the mistake of gambling with other people's freedom. Now let's see how those bets paid off. Karl the farmer was gambling on a better life for himself. What he got was extra hours of back-breaking work, as much as 100 hours a week. He was forced to stay on his land and produce what he was told to produce, because now Hitler was preparing for war. For Heinrich, who owned a hardware store, the bet didn't pay off either. 104,000 small businesses were closed in 2 years. And for Hans, conditions hadn't improved any. He had a job now in the munitions factory.
And that's also one part that I absolutely love that it mentions in this. The number of small businesses that were closed. Because how often do you hear, well, Nazis were far right. Nazis were capitalists. And you're going, no, they weren't. They weren't. They were consolidating all economic power under the party and the state. They were socializing the economy. There's a word for a group that socializes the economy. And yes, it does, Talik. Let's continue on.
He worked long hours for little pay. The working conditions grew increasingly bad. And even though he didn't like the job, he wasn't permitted to leave it. And when Hitler decided the time was right, Germany went to war. Not by declaring war, but by a carefully prepared sneak attack. Once again, Hitler needed Hans to do his dirty work. Hans was an expert at brutality this time, and Hitler had decided to use Hans and his brutality against other peoples, the Czechs, the Poles, the French, the Russians. But in the crucial test of war, Hitler's race theories didn't pay off. His pure-blooded supermen were defeated by the mongrel armies he despised, by the British of El Alamein. By the Russians at Stalingrad. then on D-Day by American soldiers of every color and religion, who smashed across the Normandy beaches and drove on through to the heart of Germany. For the misguided Germans who had swallowed the Nazi bait, the Nazi game did not pay off.
Exactly, Tock.
The continent of Europe was strewn with millions of German bodies, pure Aryan bodies. And Hans, who was going to rule the world, got only a little patch of Normandy that he could call his own. We must never let that happen to us or to our country. We must never let ourselves be divided by race or color or religion, because in this country we all belong to minority groups. I was born in Hungary. You are a Mason. These are minorities. And then you belong to other minority groups too. You are a farmer. You have blue eyes. You go to the Methodist Church. Your right to belong to these minorities is a precious thing. You have a right to be what you are and say what you think, because here we have personal freedom. We have liberty. And these are not just fancy words. This is a practical and priceless way of living. But we must work at it. We must guard everyone's liberty, or we can lose our own. If we allow any minority to lose its freedom by persecution or by prejudice, we are threatening our own freedom. And this is not simply an idea. This is good, hard common sense. You see, here in America is not a question whether we tolerate minorities. America is minorities. And that means you and me. So let's not be suckers. We must not allow the freedom or dignity of any man to be threatened by any act or word. Let's be selfish about it. Let's forget about we and they. Let's think about us.
It's just such a fucking amazing old school thing. It's 17 minutes long. There's a bunch of them. Like I said, that one here, let me just link to the channel so that everyone can go and look up. It has a bunch of other interesting ones from various time periods. They are all fascinating. This was from the Best Film Archives on YouTube. And yeah, the problem is that you have a bunch of people on the left that, and it's not exclusive to the left. You have elements on the right that do this shit too. But the ones that are in the ascendancy at the moment, the ones that are causing the most problems at the moment, are the ones that are on the left, and they keep on trying to break people down into different groups, which is, I mentioned the hyphenated American speech of Teddy Roosevelt, and I'll quickly ramble that off because, like I said, it is one of the best speeches that so few people know, and it is to the shame of the nation that somehow Teddy Roosevelt lost the argument on the hyphenated American. And it goes as follows. I stand for straight Americanism, unconditioned and unqualified, and I stand against every form of hyphenated Americanism. I do not speak of the hyphen when it is employed as a mere convenience, although personally I like to avoid its use even in such manner. I speak and condemn its use whenever it represents an effort to form political parties along racial lines or to bring pressure to bear on parties and politicians, not for American purposes, but in the interest of some group of voters of a certain national origin or of the country from which they or their fathers came. Americanism is not a matter of creed, birthplace, or national descent, but of the soul and of the spirit. If an American has the right stuff in him, I care not a snap of my fingers, whether he is Jew or Gentile, Catholic or Protestant. I care not a snap of my fingers whether his ancestors came over in the Mayflower or whether he was born or his parents were born in Germany, Ireland, France, England, Scandinavia, Russia, or Italy, or any other country. All I ask of the immigrant is that he shall be physically and intellectually fit, of sound character, and eager in good faith to become an American citizen. If the immigrant is of the right kind, then I am for him. If the Native American is of the wrong kind, I am against him. Native American in this is not the modern usage of Native American. It means a native-born son or daughter, someone born as an American. Now for our own citizens. We represent many different race strains. Our ancestors came from many different old world nationalities. It will spell ruin to this nation if these nationalities remain separated from one another instead of being assimilated into the new and larger American life. The children and our children's children of all of us have to live here in this land together. Our children's children will intermarry one another, your children's children, friends, and mine. Even if they wished, they could not remain citizens of foreign countries. The effort to keep our citizenship divided against itself by the use of the hyphen and along the lines of national origin is certain to breed a spirit of bitterness and prejudice and dislike between great bodies of our citizens. That last line especially is fucking prescient. It's something that drives me crazy, that somehow Teddy Roosevelt didn't win the argument on hyphenated Americans. How the fuck did he not win the argument on hyphenated Americans? Because that beautiful bit of speech that I just read, outlining what it means to be American, that it doesn't matter that I am so goddamn pale I can get fucking moonburns, that Adam is slightly brown, that Funkenstein is black, or whatever the hell pigmentation or creed you personally hold. What matters is that we're American. I'm an American, Adam's an American, Funkenstein's an American. It doesn't matter the rest of it. We should be united by being Americans. But we have so many people that are constantly trying to divide us, divide men against women, divide blacks against whites, and various other minorities against whites and Asians, and divide this this creed versus that creed. And at the end of the video that we watched a moment ago, there was the line that we're all minorities. And what that means, at least the way that I interpreted that line, especially since he followed up with you and me, is we are all minorities in that there is only one me. I am outnumbered by non-me's. I have no more me than you have you. So as I'm a minority, so are you. We're all just ourselves. We're individuals, and individuals are the minority when you're looking at the individual versus everyone not that individual. Which is why you have to deal with people on the individual basis. Why you have to actually meet the people in order to know their character, in order to know who they are, in order to know what they stand for. And it's infuriating that so many people keep on trying to divide groups when these groups are goddamn illusory. And they keep on trying to claim things. And when they claim things, they always make whatever group they're trying to make sound more virtuous sound even worse. There's the bill that was just passed in Florida where it was, or I think it was passed, or was it just brought up to vote, that someone that is found guilty of being a chomo would be eligible for the death penalty. And when that bill came out, there were a bunch of people that came out of the woodwork saying, oh, so they're saying that it's open season on gays in Florida? And I'm going, are you saying that every gay is a chomo? What the fuck are you saying? The only way that death penalty for chomos would be open season on gays is if every gay was a chomo. I don't believe that's the case. Nor do I think anyone else should believe that's the case. And it is really fucking frightening when the people that claim that they're the advocates for the LGBT, when they're the advocates for the gays, are the ones saying that, well, if we make it so that chomos can be put to death, well, then that's just saying all gays can be put to death. No. Gays aren't synonymous with chomos. And it's infuriating because every time that something like that happens, there's some fucking person that comes out of the woodwork and says, well, this will affect all of this group. And I'm going, no. Unless you're saying that all of that group, the only group that the chomo law would affect is all chomos. All chomos will be affected by the chomo law. Anyone not a chomo, not affected. So it pisses me off because there'll be arguments that, well, we need to be more strict with law enforcement. We need to make it so that when someone breaks a law, that they will receive the due punishment for breaking the law. And people go, well, why don't you just say that you hate black people? Because I don't think that all black people are criminal. That's the only way that that makes any fucking sense, is if you think that all black people are criminal. Then yeah, it would be against all black people. But if not all black people are criminal, then saying we need to be more strict with law enforcement, where if you commit a crime, you will be punished for the crime that you committed, then that's not against black people. That's against the criminals. And guess what? Black people are victims of criminals as well. And we see this time and time again. There are neighborhoods that are being absolutely beggared by crime. Crime isn't being caused by the poverty. The poverty is being caused by the crime. We've had how many stores recently closed down in Chicago and Portland and California and area after area because they just can't fucking function in those areas with the amount of crime. And every store that closes, especially every big box store like that closes, the price of food just went up. The difficulty of getting food just went up. The more stores that close, the harder it is to get food. And not only is it harder to get food because those stores have now closed, but also everyone that would have received money, even if you argue that, well, they weren't being paid enough when they're working those jobs. Being paid but not enough is far fucking better than not being paid. And if you think that they weren't getting paid enough, there's things that you could have pushed for when it comes to that. One of the main ones, in order to stop the depression of wages is advocate for an actually functional immigration, because that will fix that shit. When you have a hell of a lot of workers and not many jobs, then it becomes really easy for those jobs to fill their positions for pittance. When you have a lot of jobs but not many workers, the wages go up because they have to start competing with the other businesses for the workers. You want to get into a situation where businesses are competing for you if you want the wages to go up. Don't just mandate it. The mandate it just causes more problems, and it prices people out of the economy. Do it the proper way. Do it by making sure that we have a functional immigration policy, that we have a functioning goddamn country. Because once we have the jobs, once we have the people, and once we know how many people we have and we aren't flooding it with cheap labor, the wages will increase. And the wages will increase in a way that's actually able to be maintained. I mean, shit, I've talked about it how many times. The origin of the modern American middle class was Ford. And Ford decided to do that because he wanted his workers to be the best workers that he could get. So he wanted to poach workers from other companies. So he paid more than the other companies. And he wanted his workers to be able to buy his cars. Because if every person that worked at the factory could buy a car from the factory, well, that's more money for him. He created the modern American middle class. Someone who's dubbed a robber baron. And the rest of the robber barons were given a fucking shit run of it as well when it comes to history. Not all of them were saints, but a lot of the ones that they smear the most were the far better than a lot of the people that they tried to say these were the good people. Shit, a lot of them got their start by violating government monopolies. And yeah, this is something that I've also brought up before, Funkenstein, where people always talk about how everything's gotten so much more expensive. There's one thing that's actually gotten more expensive. Adam, can you name the one thing that's gotten more expensive? The one product? Are you there, Adam? I think he might have stepped away for a moment. So the one product that...
Yo. It's not that I stand on Rome presents. It's just, sometimes you step away from some kind of fuzzball activities,
Fair enough. So
I'm just
do you know
saying.
the one product that got more expensive over time?
Well, I can't say it's the cat videos or the home cardstead.
It's houses.
Houses.
Houses are more expensive now than they were 50 years ago. Everything else is cheaper. And when I say cheaper, some people might be going, well, it cost only this much money in the 80s in order to buy something, and now it costs twice that amount of money now. So that didn't get cheaper. No. Look at the actual real value. When you consider inflation, everything's cheaper. You get more television for the same amount of money when calculated for inflation now than you did in the 80s. By a fucking long margin. Because was a thing. I looked it up a while ago where you get a 32-inch flat screen HD TV for the same amount of money now as you would have been able to purchase like a 17-inch fat body TV in the 80s.
Oh shit! Well, I mean, getting any movie or getting any screen during the 80s is going to give you
It cost a fuck ton of money back then, yeah.
Yeah.
And now, I've talked about this so many times. We went from, throughout the overwhelming majority of human existence, there were diseases that you would only get if you were filthy rich and or royalty. You would only get gout if you were rich. You would only get diabetes, type 2 diabetes, acquired diabetes, if you were rich. You would only become obese if you were rich. These were things that were truisms throughout the vast majority of human existence. Now, what are common health problems when it comes to the poorest in our society? Poor people in the United States tend to be obese. How the fuck did we go from only the rich are able to be obese to poor people are able to be obese? Well, economic efficiency. It used to be that only rich people could get diabetes. Now we have poor people getting diabetes. It used to be that only rich people could get gout. Now we have poor people getting gout. In the 1800s, it was ridiculous wealth that someone would have the ability to have fruit in the middle of winter. Hell, it wasn't very long ago. If Skep or Hammer are still floating around, they can probably remember a time. I know Skep absolutely can, and Hammer probably can. Remember a time when giving someone a clementine for Christmas was a show of wealth.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's not a single person in the US that can't go to a grocery store and buy a clementine in the middle of fucking winter. Because we've been able to make things more efficient. We've been able to make things better. And it's something that it pisses me off that people keep on trying to make it sound like, oh, everything's gotten so much worse. Do you know how expensive a television is? Cheaper than it was in the 90s, cheaper than it was in the 80s, cheaper than it was in the early 2000s. When you look at the real value that you're getting, when you look at the quality of TV that you're getting, when you're looking at the size, when you're looking at the inflation, everything now is better than it was. It's the beauty of this shit. And a lot of the issue is that people are being taught to place blame in the wrong place. They're being taught that the economy is a zero-sum game. It isn't a zero-sum game. They're being taught that the only way that someone can become rich is if they're stealing from someone else. No, that's not the only way. In a properly done economy, the only way that someone can become wealthy is if they provide value to other people. That's the only way. Now, we have some elements of broken economy. I'm not going to say our economy is perfectly run, that we're running it as it should be run. But we're not doing as poorly as everyone seems to fucking think. At least not in the long term. Short term, we're doing a lot of really fucked up shit that's making things bad. But it's not a death knell. It isn't something that people should be going, you know what? We were better off in the 50s than we are now. No, we aren't. Are there some cultural elements that I wish would come back from the 50s? Yes. Are there some cultural elements that I wish would come back from the 1800s? Yes. Do I want to just live in the 1800s? No. Do I just want to live in the 50s? No. I want now, but I want some of the elements that were beneficial, that were discarded by feckless people just trying to change for the sake of change.
You pose a heavy question.
Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things that is constantly driving me up the wall currently. There's this, well, you're only progressive if you're trying to constantly push for change. No. Every progressive should at some point in their life have or at least theoretically, have a position where they would be going, no, this is what we need to do. And the moment that they're able to acquire that, they should be going, no, this is the way that we want this set up. We aren't moving past this. We aren't changing this. This is the right way. Anyone that's just doing change for the sake of change, they're completely fucking useless. They're pointless existences that are just a drain. You need to have your view of how you want things to be and work towards that view. And know when things have gone just far enough. This is one of the reasons why there's the claim that, well, the Republicans used to be progressive, but then they became conservative. No, the Republicans had an outlook. They wanted people to be judged on the individual basis. They wanted law, they wanted order, and they wanted freedoms. So, in order to serve that end, they were the ones that pushed for abolition of slavery, because that's pushing for freedom. They were the ones that stood against Jim Crow, because that was judging people as a group rather than judging individuals. They were against affirmative action, in large part, not entirely, but in large part, because again, that's judging people as a group, not individuals. Affirmative action is an absolute monstrosity that should have never been put into place. The people that say, well, it had a point at one point, I disagree. But even if you're of the position that it had a point at one point, we should all be able to agree now that it's outlived its usefulness. Yet there are people that say, no, we need to go farther. We need to make it more discriminatory. No. And me saying no to that doesn't mean that I'm not for equality. It means that that is a change. That is a negative change. I don't want negative changes. I want to achieve a certain state of things, and then I want to preserve that certain state of things, because I think that it is the best way of doing things. I want an open capitalist economy. I want to have laws on the books that go against anti-competitive actions and hammer those into the dirt, but I don't want a lot of government oversight on shit. Because the government's too fucking inefficient. And not only is it too inefficient, but it's too inefficient and it hires absolute gormless fucks. And the idea of the philosopher kings is never going to happen. We're never going to have the permanently wise, benevolent, ruling class. And because that can fail so horrendously when it is tried, I don't even want to try it. I want to go for a system where, yeah, it might not be as clean, as beautiful as the ideal version of the Philosopher Kings. But
that's true.
It is a hell of a lot better than the worst that the Philosopher King's idea could lead to. And it's not much worse than the best. I want to maximize the incentives for people to do the right things. And I want to minimize the incentives for people to do the wrong things. That's the way that society should be set up.
It's a positive message, you know?
Yeah.
Good
because the
outlook
thing is
to go strive for.
That most of the time, or all the time, truly good people, because I've explained my idea of the certain percent saints, certain percent sinners, certain percent everyone else idea of how I think people are set up, right? Where I think a certain percent are obligate saints. They literally do not have it in them to harm a fly. And it does not matter what situation you put them in, how much hell you make them suffer. They will still be good and sweet and innocent and lovely. These people are vanishingly few and far between. On the other side, you have the obligate sinners. You have the demons. Whatever the fuck term you want to use for them. These are the people that are functionally obligately evil, where it does not matter how pleasant their existence is made, they will still look at another person and they'll go, if I can get away with it, I'll kill him. It'll be interesting.
Yeah.
I'll torture them. It'll be interesting. You're always going to have the obligate saints. You're always going to have the obligate sinners. But then you have the vast majority of people, which are neither. And to my mind, this vast majority can actually become better than the saints and worse than the sinners. And these people, it matters a fair bit, the conditions that they're in. But more than the conditions that they're in, it matters what choices they make. So, one of the vast majority of us that has that certain element of light and that certain element of shadow, like I said, I think that they can become even better than the saints, because the saints would have a hard time if it came down to, in order to save someone's life, they ended up having to kill someone else. The saint would have a hard time doing that. Someone with that little bit of gray, they could do it. They could do it, and it wouldn't destroy them for all the life.
I mean, if they're gray, I could see them doing it like a few times, but after a while, it's got to take a toll.
I think that it depends, because there's different sorts of people. So if you have a gray person that is really good at compartmentalizing, then they'd probably be able to do it time and time again because, nope, that was what was needed to be done. I did it because it was needed to be done. I didn't get joy out of doing it. So why should I dwell on it?
No, well, I guess that's true too.
Because, yeah, and those are the people that you really want to be your police. Those are the people that you really want to be your military. You want those people that choose to be good. And they constantly choose to be good. Because they also have that ability to do what is needed in order to save people, in order to help people. The obligate good, they make fantastic doctors. They make fantastic nurses. They make a lot of other roles. They aren't good soldiers. They aren't good police officers. They aren't good guards or correction officers.
Well, hold on. So if you were to catch a doctor who was working overnight and he just so happens to have a cup of noodles, would you take a second glance at him?
Why? He's having a snack.
Yeah.
That's perfectly fine. He's probably hungry. I might go, oh, sorry, the cafeteria only had a cup of noodles. That sucks. But I won't look down on him.
Oh, all right.
But yeah, that's... And everything just cut out for a moment.
Oh.
No, not everything cut out. You can still hear me. Something else cut out then. So if you can still hear me, then I'm assuming that everyone else on stream can still hear me. So that's my view of people. And you're always going to have those three groups to my mind. So the way that I want to set up society is I want to set up society in a way that you'll get, of course, all the saints will be saintly. I don't want to forbid the saints from being saintly. I want to make as many of the gray people, if not all the gray people, all those people in the in-between, become good as well. And then I want to have society set up in such a way that a person that is extremely greedy would have to look at society and go, well, if I want to get as much money as I possibly can, the easiest way of doing that is I provide a service that people are willing to pay for. And I do it well enough that they continue paying for it. Because that allows me to harness some element of the sinners.
I mean, that sounds fair enough, right?
That's the beauty of capitalism, to my mind. That it allows you some element of the people that wouldn't be good otherwise to be incentivized to be good. And that's also why I think that having proper punishment for breaking laws is important, because that proper punishment removes the incentive of committing those crimes.
Well, wouldn't that bring up a argument of whether or not our current prison systems are supposed to be set up as a rehabilitation or a punishment and a deterrent towards the crime that they might commit.
I think that we should have effectively a 2-stage program where first stage is punishment, second stage is rehabilitation. Because there should be a punishment aspect, but there should also be a rehabilitation aspect. And we've had some times in our history where we've gone far too much towards punishment. We have other times where we've gone far too much towards, oh, look at the poor Aladdins. We need to rehabilitate them. And we need to be able to realize that there are some people that there's no rehabilitation. One of the crimes with the lowest rates of rehabilitation, so the highest recidivism rate, are chomos. Last I looked into it, chomos have almost a 100% recidivism rate. And the thing is that prison should have 3 aspects to it, to my mind. Like I said, part of it is punishment. You need that punishment because it's part of removing incentives for criminals. Part of it is if you remove the criminals from the society, then those criminals are not committing crimes while they're removed. Or at least are not committing crimes against the society while they're removed.
So kind of like a loophole.
That's part of it. That's an important aspect of prisons. And then, like I said, part of it should be those that can be rehabilitated should be rehabilitated. But if I had my druthers, the first 2 are more important than the third. Have a good one, Kefki. But the first 2 are more important than the third. The third is still important. But without the first 2, everything just goes tits up and doesn't fucking work. And there's certain people that, like I said, they will just keep on committing crimes, and you need to keep them away. You need to segregate them from society.
Yeah, dude, there's just some people that they just cannot
They're
help
born
wrong.
And this is also part of the reason why I think one of the things that we need to do is we need to restart state institutions, but we need to make sure that they're properly run, properly managed, and that they're actually doing what they should be. Because there's a hell of a lot of people that are in prison that prisons can't treat them the way that they need to be treated. And the example that I always use is schizophrenia. If you have someone who has profound schizophrenia, or paranoid schizophrenia, and they go off med, and then they act out, well, prison needs to have a you do X, you get Y style of punishment, where it is entirely formulaic. So you start getting into fights, you're going to seg. And you're going to seg on either COS or OBS. Most of the time, if it's for a fight, you'll be put into seg under COS. Close observation status. OBS is observation status. They sound the same. One is done mainly for suicide. One is done mainly for belligerence. So you had paranoid schizophrenia, which then resulted in you acting out because you went off your meds. Then you ended up in SEG, and you ended up in SEG on status. So what that means is that you're in a cell that has a camera. Every 15 minutes or less, someone has to check on you through the camera, and they have to write a log on what you're doing. Every 30 minutes, an officer will come walking by your cell and look into the window of your cell.
Hold on, is it like Five Nights at Freddy's kind of cameras?
Not entirely different, but not exactly the same. It's SEG cameras are... Have you ever been in a major building security center?
Yeah, I think once I might have.
So it's like a normal building security center where you have a monitor where you can flip through cameras, or you can bring up a bunch of cameras at once. Normally there's one monitor that just has all the cameras up at the same time, and then you have another monitor that you click through. And you can bring up one of the images that you see on all the cameras monitor. You can pull up on your other monitor so that you can see more detail in it. That's the way that it's set up. So you'll see who's on status, then you'll see what camera they're on the large multi-monitor, and then on your secondary monitor, you'll pull up that camera every 15 minutes and record what that person's doing. So if you're paranoid schizophrenic and you feel like the world's out to get you and everyone's watching you, and you're suddenly put in a cell that has a camera that's checked every 15 minutes and is constantly in front of a person who's sitting in a security bubble, so they can see everything that you do at any given point of the day, and then you have a person that comes by your cell every 30 minutes and looks into the window of your cell in order to see what you're doing, does that make you feel more or less like everyone's watching you?
Damn, I thought you were going to say, like, you might be a redneck.
Nah, it makes you feel more like everyone's fucking watching you, because, for a change, people are actually watching you.
Oh, yeah.
And turns out that when you are actually watching someone 24/7 and they're paranoid schizophrenic, it makes it worse. But you have to do it. You have to do that as a correction officer, because they violated rule X, they get punishment Y. And eventually, they'll be acting up enough that we'll be able to finally get permission from the hospital clinic to give them their psych med forcibly. And then they'll return to normal a few days after they've been put on mandatory medication. But eventually, because they've returned to normal, they'll be released back to Gen Pop, and they'll be on their med, and they'll be doing fine, and then they'll reach a point where they go, you know what, I think I can go off med again. So they'll go off med. Then they start to become paranoid schizophrenic again. Profoundly paranoid schizophrenic again. So they start acting out, which causes them to start a fight, which causes them to end up back in SEG, which causes them to get even more validation that, yes, everyone is in fact watching them, because they're in a cell that has a camera that's monitored every 15 minutes, and a person walks by their cell every 30 minutes and looks in the window of their cell in order to figure out what they're doing. You see how this just kind of keeps on spiraling in an endless cycle?
Yeah, kind of. It's like a. Yeah.
It's like a wheel, right?
It's
You start at
ridiculous.
the top of the wheel, it goes round, you end up at the bottom of the wheel, it continues going around, you're back at the top of the wheel. You never
You know-
change, really. You just keep on going round and round and round and round and round.
And it might just drive somebody crazy.
And that shit is not something that a prison should be dealing with.
Nope.
That shit is something that a psych center should be dealing with.
Yeah.
An asylum should be dealing with this person because they'd be able to have the more tailored approach to each psychological disorder. And they would also have an easier time mandating the medicine at a psych ward than they do in prison. Because there was a big issue with prisons for a while where a bunch of prisons were accused of chemically sedating their prisoners.
Let me just think of the type of people that you would employ to these different situations. I mean, you're not finding people who are involved in the medical community or the psychiatric community trying to, find a spot in prison systems.
Yeah, your average correction officer is not a medical professional.
Yeah. I mean, and then you look at, prisons and it's like, okay, jail guard, you're just looking at somebody who's going to, maintain the order.
Yep.
Not somebody who's going to be, deep diving into somebody's psychics.
Yep. And unfortunately, prisons are having the same problem that psych facilities were having. Because when psych facilities started up, there was some barbarity and issues because the state of mental medical science was aspiring to one day be considered comparable to alchemy. I think that's really the friendliest that I could phrase that. When one of your treatments is, well, we stick an ice pick near their lacrimal gland, and then we angle it just right, give it a few taps with a hammer, and then just kind of do a circle with it and then pull it back out. And that's one of our treatments. That's not a valid medical treatment. That's fucking weird shit that you're doing. That was one of the ways that they did lobotomies at the time. So when you're dealing with that, yeah, that's barbarity. But when you looked at early asylums in the US, specifically in the US, there are a lot of issues with Bedlam, but Bedlam had many of the issues that I'm about to go into with the US ones. You had, at the start of asylums, people that cared going into work in the asylums, and they had the proper staffing. They had decent pay for the asylum staff. And then First World War happened. First World War ended. The number of people in asylums skyrocketed. The staffing did not. So you had overcrowded asylums, and you didn't have enough people to actually do the job. So they were doing more work for the same pay. That does not give you the best results. People started getting burnt out, so then you had fewer people doing more work for the same pay. Still not a good thing. Then Second World War happened. Second World War ended. And that shit happened again. Where, again, you had even more people in the asylums, and you had fewer workers getting paid roughly the same amount. So you started driving out all the people that were actually good that you wanted to be asylum workers, and you started having a bunch of people that looked at getting a job at an asylum as an opportunity, and not an opportunity to do good, but an opportunity to be able to do their own fucked up shit with people that no one cared about, and who the hell would find out. So you started having rampant abuses within the asylums.
Well, that's the sad thing about, these situations, especially when you were talking about just a little bit ago about the pay for them. There's not an incentive, a financial incentive, for some of these people who actually genuinely want to go out there and help people. And you can sit there and say, oh, well, you should, toss aside the financial, it's like, dude, but look, we still need to pay rent. We still need to pay bills. We got shit that we need to do, even if we want to help you. Like that's bottom line is, we're of no benefit if we are gone. That's just the reality of it.
I'm trying to remember who it was. It was, I want to say Sam Cedar was one of them. And it was a conservative that were having a conversation. And Sam Cedar was doing his normal shtick of, so a 90% tax on the wealthiest sounds like a really good idea. And the guy looked at him and he went, Sam, you currently get most of your money through ads and YouTube and Patreon and things like that. Well, I get most of my money through this method. Okay, so you get most of your money through that method. If you were told that you were only going to get 10% of everything that was given to you, would you put out as many videos as you currently do? Would you do as much work as you currently do? Well, if I was only getting 10%, no, I wouldn't. Why the fuck do you think anyone else would continue doing the same amount of work if you won't do the same amount of work? If you wouldn't do your job for less money, why the fuck are you looking at another job and saying, well, they should be willing to work for less money? They should just have the passion and be willing to do it. No, fuck you. They have the same shit going on in their life as you have going on in yours. They have to pay for their food. They have to pay for their rent. They have to pay for their medical. They have to pay for their families. They have a lot of shit going on that they're dealing with. And they're going to have to pay for this somehow. So,
dude, they're stuck in the same matrix bubble as you are. You got to have some level of compassion. Now, that's not to say that there aren't those care workers that are just absolute cunt rags, and
that was what I was getting to, that a lot of those people, the only reason they're in those positions is because they were the best person that applied at the time.
Well, I think
and they were the best person that applied for it at the time, because all the people that we actually want to be in those positions were able to get different positions. So the standards fall as they're still trying to fill the same number of positions. They lower standards. They get a worse crop, and then they hire the best of that worst crop, and they're still having trouble. So they lower standards, and then they get a new class with lower standards, which means that they aren't as good. Then they hire the best of that lowest group or lower standards, and they're still having problems. So they lower standards, and it's this vicious cycle that happened in asylums. It happened in prisons. It was something that a lot of the guards and I were constantly bitching and moaning about, because we could see it happen. We could see someone come down and we would be able to tell, okay, this is a good person that is doing this job for the right reasons, or just because it's a decent job for where they were in their life and the pay was something that they were willing to deal with it for. These are the people that are bastards and should never be given any sort of power. And we would, at times, be looking at higher ups and going, so-and-so is going to get someone hurt. They're going to get someone hurt because they should not be in this position. But
I'd agree with that, yeah.
The problem is that we didn't have enough people trying to become correction officers, so because we didn't have enough people, those were the people that we got. Which was a massive issue. And that was the reason why when I was a correction officer, at least once a month, one female officer would be walked out and locked out for sucking, fucking, and smuggling. And the way that you fix that issue, the way that you improve prisons, increase prison guard pay, until you're actually able to hold the standards that you should be holding for correction officers. The way that you increase the standards of healthcare is increase the pay for the positions that you're having trouble with until you're able to get people that meet those standards that you've increased the pay in order to be able to afford. And you'll get a better result. You want to have asylums back. Make sure that you pay the asylum workers sufficient in order to get the standard of people that you want in those positions to apply for the job.
Yeah, if we're gonna start opening up these institutes, I would hope that a higher level of care would go into it.
Yep. Because it's the same thing that companies do currently. When companies really wanted programmers, what did they start doing? They increased the pay of their programmers. Then they started coming up with nice perks for their programmers. They came up with better lunches. They came up with various things that their programmers could do throughout the day in order to burn off some steam. And then those places started getting better programmers. This is something that we've known since fucking Ford. Like I said, he created the middle class doing this shit.
Yep.
He wanted the best factory workers. The best factory workers were working at his factories and other people's factories. In order to make sure that he got all of the best ones, he went, I'll pay more than the other factories. And by paying more, he was able to get a higher standard of worker to come work for his factory. You get what you pay for. But I've had now 2 rants this stream. And it's getting towards the end. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about?
Nothing really in particular comes to mind. I think we've covered a lot of the bases that, the goings-ons of the times that we're in.
Mm-hmm.
As crazy as they are.
And like I was saying earlier, remember the good things from time to time. It's easy to get bogged down in everything that has gone poorly. But remember, there's a lot of shit that's changed for the better. Even if it's just simple shit. Even if it's just the fact that, hey, we all have working refrigerators. Hopefully, we all have working refrigerators. And if we don't, we have the ability to get a working refrigerator. Hey, we have working ovens. Hey, we have televisions and computers and these things that we wouldn't have had a couple generations ago. Things are improving. Things get cheaper. As we come up with efficiencies, things get cheaper. Now, in the short term, things can get worse. We can have inflation problems like we currently have. But hopefully we'll see this through to the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And things will start getting better again.
I agree.
So don't lose hope. So, you didn't have anything else that you wanted to talk about, or anything else that you wanted to add?
No, I can't think of anything. Only thing I can think of that comes to mind is and I don't know if he probably won't see this, but or hear this, but haha, Terry, looking forward to playing some Dino Rex on Monday.
Nice. So, shall we give our parting words and then fuck off?
Yeah, sounds good.
So, what do you want your parting words to be?
Damn. Well, first off, I can't believe we're already, closing off April. It's been a year. So with that, don't let time escape you. Maybe going fast, but slow down a bit and appreciate the things in your life that make you happy.
Yep.
Time may go fast, but your positive vibration remains intact. So make sure you keep that going up. That sounded way crazier than I thought it would be. But other than that,
remember to take a break for yourself and remember the good things.
Yes. Thank you.
I think a more succinct way of saying it.
Yes. Thank you for translating it, sir.
Also, along that same lines, remember to tell your loved ones that you love them.
Yes. Yeah, you don't know how important that is. Well, I guess until you
can't do it anymore.
Yeah. And as hokey as that sounds, it sure has an impact after a bit. So, and I can say that not after a certain after a bit that will have an impact for everyone. But yeah, no. Outside of that, thanks again for inviting me on or letting me.
Always a good time.
Yeah. Thanks everybody in chat. Hopefully everybody enjoyed themselves. Yeah. Good out, my delightful lady, and I love y'all, and God bless.
And I'm actually going to leave off with a different parting word than my standard, because this fits in with what we just said. This is life, and I will not lie by saying every day will be sunshine. But there will be sunshine again. And that is a very different thing to say. That is true. And with that, have a good night, all. The zoo is closed.
Night, y'all.
Okay, there we go. I was about to say, this is when you say good night, Adam. But you said it. Have a good night, all. This will take a few moments to actually register.